History came perilously close to repeating itself tonight, as a distressed bear, Joshua Richards, still battling cravings for the opioid painkillers and sleeping tablets Joe Absalom, once supplied, lost control at the hospital. Frustrated by the long wait, Bear lashed out and almost strangled student Dr. Jacob, Joe Warrenplant, thankfully coming to his senses before any harm was done. But after Paddy, Dominic Brunt, informed Bear that the police would be coming, Bear slipped out of the hospital and was last seen making his way along the streets of Houghton. Next week, a paranoid and disoriented Bear is wandering along a remote country road, ducking away from any passing cars. Having spent the night searching for his dad, Paddy is frantic with worry. But matters escalate further when DS Walsh, Amanda Ryan, calls at the house. By disappearing, Bear has breached his bail conditions and, following his assault on Jacob at the hospital, she has no option but to have Bear held on remand when he's found. Fearing the worst, Paddy eventually tracks Bear down to the field at Butler's, where Anya's now empty grave lies. Bear's exhausted, and clearly in a bad mental state. Gently coaxing him back to the car, Paddy is faced with an impossible decision. He knows he must inform DS Walsh, yet he's desperate to keep Bear out of prison. Convinced that custody will only worsen his dad's mental state, Paddy forms a plan of his own, offering to pay for Bear to be admitted to a secure mental health unit in the hope it will prevent his immediate imprisonment. But with the police already involved and Bear's bail breached, can Paddy really keep him out of a cell? Elsewhere, the pressure continues to mount on Kane, Jeff Hordley, as he tries to juggle the stress of Moira's, Natalie J. Robb, imprisonment, the mounting financial strain at Butler's, and his prostate cancer diagnosis. When Lydia, Karen Blick, offers to take the boys Kyle, Huey Quinn, and Isaac, Bobby Dunsmuir. For a few days, Kane refuses, insisting he can manage, but once he's alone it's clear how stretched he is. Matters escalate when Kane discovers that new farm co-owner Joe, Ned Porteous, has arranged a herd inspection following a suspected TB case, knowing the dire financial consequences it could have. With movement restrictions immediately imposed, there's nothing that can be done until they receive the all-clear. A calculative Joe moves in once again, reiterating his offer to buy Moira and Kane's share of the farm. Kane says little in response, while Matty makes it clear he wants to keep the farm going for Moira. But it's becoming clear that their hope of keeping Butler's is diminishing by the minute, and with Graham, Andrew Scarborough, again telling Kane that his best course of action is to sell up, will Kane finally decide to throw in the towel and let the Tates win? Granddaughter Sarah, Katie Hill, the only member of the family to be aware of his diagnosis, had attempted to help Kane's financial situation by stealing cars. It's definitely hard, and the pressure's on her, being the only one that knows, Katie Hill recently told Every Soap and other press. She appreciates the fact that Kane has confided in her, and it's a massive thing that he's chosen to tell her about, but it's definitely difficult. Her carrying the weight of it on her shoulders, not being able to talk to Charity, or all the people that she usually would go to when something like this happens, she probably is struggling quite a bit with it. Despite Kane making it clear that he won't involve her in any more thefts, Sarah can't ignore the mounting strain on the farm following the potential TB outbreak. When she spots a sports car parked outside the village hall, she cannot resist temptation and hops into the driver's seat, only for Jacob to catch her before she can drive off. To make matters worse, they soon realize that the car belongs to none other than Jacob's boss at the hospital, Dr. Caitlin Todd Caroline Harker. If she'd been caught, Jacob's career could have been over before he'd even finished his placement. Sarah's in an impossible situation as Jacob demands answers, not wanting to betray Kane's trust by revealing the truth about his situation, leaving her husband all the more frustrated. Deep down, she wishes she could tell him, but she has that loyalty to her granddad, Katie explains. They have such an amazing relationship. She doesn't want to jeopardize that. Right now she's sticking by Grumpy, and she's doing what he wants to do, but inside she 100% wants to tell Jacob, because it is affecting their relationship. Furious at being kept in the dark, Jacob storms over to the garage where he confronts Kane, demanding to know why Sarah has been risking everything by stealing cars with him. It's also news to Charity, Emma Atkins, who joins Jacob in giving Kane both barrels. Already at the brink, Kane refuses to explain himself and instead shuts the conversation down, stalking off before either of them can press him further. It doesn't take long before Liam, Johnny McPherson, gets wind of what's been going on, and heading up to Butler's he offers a different perspective. Liam suggests that stealing cars alongside his granddaughter may be a sign that Kane's attempt to handle his diagnosis alone isn't working, and that shutting out his family could be doing more harm than good. Meanwhile, Jacob's frustration only deepens as Sarah once again rushes after her granddad, prioritizing him over their marriage. But when she finds Kane, she no longer holds back. The whole time she's trying to tell him, "You need to tell more family members," Katie adds. "The more people you have around you, the easier it is to get by." But he's being stubborn at the moment. As we know, Kane Dingle isn't the easiest person to get through to when he's got his mind set on something. Fed up with carrying the burden alone, Sarah accuses Kane of being a coward in his refusal to front up to the rest of the family, making it clear she can't continue being the only one who knows. Seeing his granddaughter, now also pushed to the edge, will Kane decide to finally be honest with the rest of his family? If the close shave with Dr. Todd's car wasn't enough, Jacob's fraught relationship with his formidable boss takes a surprising turn when he makes a faux pas in the Woolpack. Frustrated by her constant scrutiny, Jacob opens up to Eric, Chris Chittle, about Dr. Todd, questioning her methods and admitting how difficult he's finding working under her. But he's mortified when he realizes too late that Dr. Todd is standing directly behind him in the pub and has heard every word. Jacob is forced into an excruciating apology, hastily attempting to recover the situation. Rather than reprimand him, however, Dr. Todd later reveals that she's selected him for her mentorship program. Whilst it's an exciting professional opportunity, Jacob can barely mask his discomfort. He forces a tight smile and accepts, but privately he's left uneasy about what even tighter supervision will mean for him. Elsewhere in the village, guilt is eating away at Arthur, Alfie Clark, in the wake of Laurel's fall. The two had been arguing when Arthur lashed out and pushed his mum, causing her to fall and hit her head on the bottom of the stairs. When she eventually regained consciousness in hospital, Laurel claimed in front of Gabby, Rosie Bentham, that she couldn't remember anything about the fall. Though partly relieved, Arthur's terrified that the truth will come out. Next week, Nicola is quick to suggest there must be a medical explanation for what happened, determined to get to the bottom of Laurel's apparent blackout. As she heads off in search of a doctor, Arthur can barely hide his nerves, fearing that any further probing could expose what really happened. Back at Mulberry, the tension only deepens when Gabby witnesses Laurel suffering another wave of dizziness. Concerned, Gabby begins to question whether this is simply a one-off incident. For Arthur, watching Laurel struggle is almost unbearable, knowing that her ongoing symptoms stem from his actions. Later, GP Manpreet, Rebecca Sarkar, calls round on a home visit and, sensing something doesn't quite add up, asks to speak to Laurel alone, sending both Gabby and Arthur out of the room. Later in the week, Gabby's suspicions are also rising. But will her eyes turn towards her younger half-brother? Also next week, Jai, Chris Bisson, and Carrie's, Laura Norton, secret workplace romance continues to heat up, but keeping it hidden is becoming increasingly complicated. If the boss-slash-worker dynamic wasn't enough to contend with, Carrie has recently become the latest Mrs. Pollard, after marrying Eric in a mutual arrangement to safeguard Jacob's inheritance. Around the village, she must keep up the appearance of a contented newlywed, whilst her real romance remains under wraps. Carrie throws herself into the performance, openly mocking and belittling Jai in front of colleagues to keep suspicions at bay. For her, the contrast appears to add to the thrill, knowing that after cutting him down in public, they can resume their passion in private. Jai, however, is noticeably less comfortable with the arrangement. Forced to ignore her remarks to avoid raising eyebrows, he begins to question how long he can maintain the facade without it taking a toll. The streets of Houghton were cold and eerily quiet that evening, the fading light casting long shadows across the village as Beowulf trudged along the narrow country road. Every step seemed heavier than the last, his mind a jumbled mess of cravings, paranoia, and exhaustion. The hospital had been a trigger. The long wait, the dismissive staff, the suffocating pressure, it had all boiled over. When Bear's hands had closed around Jacob Gallagher's throat in a moment of blind panic, he had finally realized he'd almost crossed a line he could never come back from. Thankfully, instinct and a flicker of reason had intervened. He released the student doctor before doing any real harm, but the damage had been done. The hospital staff's whispers, the sideway glances, the knowledge that the police would be called, it pressed on him like a vice. Paddy's voice echoed in his ears, the consequences. Bail breach. Remand. The cold certainty of a prison cell. And so he had slipped away, disappearing into the night, the village lights receding behind him. By morning, Paddy had been searching for hours. The panic etched across his face was only compounded when DS Walsh arrived at the Dingle household, her expression firm, professional, and unyielding. The bail breach and hospital assault meant there was no flexibility. Bear would be taken into custody the moment he was located. Paddy's heart pounded as he traced his father's path to the remote field at Butler's, the same field where Anya Barisha's grave now lay empty. A silent reminder of loss, grief, and mistakes too heavy to bear. There he found Bear, hunched over, ragged, and disoriented, muttering under his breath to the wind. Paddy's approach was slow, measured, gentle. Every word, every gesture was designed to coax Bear into coherence, without triggering another outburst. "Dad, come on," Paddy murmured, taking a cautious step closer. Bear looked up, eyes glassy, desperate, and lost. Paddy faced a crushing choice. Alert the authorities and risk sending his father into a cell where his fragile mental state would deteriorate, or find another way. With a deep breath, Paddy formulated a plan. There had to be a safer alternative, a secure mental health unit that could treat Bear properly. It was expensive, but it might prevent an immediate imprisonment. As he guided Bear to the car, he clung to hope that it would be enough. Meanwhile, the pressure on the Dingle family compounded elsewhere. Kane Dingle's mind was a storm of anxiety and exhaustion. Moira's imprisonment, the precarious financial situation at Butler's, and the constant stress of managing the farm alone left him frayed at the edges. The recent news of his prostate cancer only added another layer of weight. When Lydia offered to take the boys, Kyle and Isaac, for a few days, Kane's stubborn pride refused. He insisted he could manage. But the moment he was alone, the cracks in his composure became apparent. The farm's livestock faced a new threat, a suspected TB outbreak prompting a herd inspection. Movement restrictions were imposed immediately, and Kane felt trapped, powerless to act until clearance arrived. Joe Tate's presence loomed over every decision. Calculative and methodical, Joe offered to buy Kane and Moira's share of the farm. A lifeline on the surface, but a bitter pill for Kane to swallow. Matty, on the other hand, clung to the hope of preserving Butler's, arguing passionately for its future. Yet the mounting pressures made it increasingly clear that Kane's fight to maintain control might be futile. Caught in the middle of these tensions was Sarah, Kane's granddaughter, who alone knew the full weight of his diagnosis. Attempting to ease the burden, she had taken matters into her own hands, stealing cars in a desperate bid to stabilize finances. The thrill was paired with fear. She knew that discovery could ruin not just her efforts, but Jacob's career too. One afternoon, she spotted a sports car parked outside the village hall. Impulse overtook caution, and she jumped into the driver's seat, only to be intercepted by none other than Jacob Gallagher.